colleagues, welcome in our UCMC Center. Our objective is to talk about the reforms in Ukraine, and that there are super priority reforms, and those which surface seem to be not top priority, but structure-wise they are really important. We are going to talk about the audit activity in Ukraine. And this is a narrow specialization in actual reform, seemingly, but in fact, much depends on this reform, like the efficient function of the economy in many of its aspects. And today we will try to talk about reform in this sector from the purely professional point of view, and also the impact of this reform on function of the economy and the public enterprises and financial market. And I'm really happy that we have Olena Makeeva, Deputy Minister of Finance of Ukraine, then Bohdan Lukashevych, Director of the Accounting Department of the National Bank of Ukraine, Sergiy Zubyk, Director of the Regulatory and Supervisory Agency, Technology and Patient and the National Committee, who is going to join us. And I believe that Timur, Khromaev, Head of the National Commission on Securities and Stock Market of Ukraine, and there are a lot of speakers who would like to voice their opinions. We have an hour and a half for our discussion, and I do hope that we will be very brief and laconic in our discussion of those issues, and we'll try to be less emotional, because the idea is to listen to different opinions, pros and cons. And now I give the floor to the author, the representative of the institution which is responsible for this reform. I'm talking about Ms. Olena Makeeva, representative Minister of Finance of Ukraine, just to say what they are doing in order to implement that reform. Thank you very much. I also would like to introduce you Katerina Rafalska, who's advisor to the Minister of Economy. That's why we're going to have a very fruitful discussion on this issue. First of all, I would like to say that to implement reforms in the accounting and auditing is our duty, and commitment undertaken by Ukraine within the agreement of association with the European Union. We have to harmonize our legislation with the European legislation directives. There is a resolution Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine dated April this year, which also obliges those to implement the laws. The European legislation in the sphere of the auditing activities in Ukraine, deadline till the July 2015. We have August today. We have this draft law in place. We're going to talk about that. It's been submitted for coordination between different ministers and departments, after which it's going to be committed to the Cabinet of Ministers. We also would like to draw attention to the following: what we have today. What the facts exist today, which we cannot but talk about. We have the banking crisis, we have the fraud and manipulation in the stock market, and we cannot just be quiet about that. The financial reporting 55 banks were introduced temporarily. The temporary administration, they went through the audit done by 23 audit companies. We are talking about those banks which, due to the bankruptcy and insolvency, due to that, this resulted in a very bad situation which our citizens found themselves in. We did the audit for over 55 banks. Only in case of 5 banks, the audit companies gave negative opinion, or just refused to voice their opinion, or did not come to the opinion, and they get the conditional positive or positive the rest, or the positive assessment. That means that the auditing company confirmed the financial statement of those banks which are bankrupt today, and the people cannot take back their deposited money. That's why we say that the auditor profession is a socially important profession. If you're talking about the financial statement, who provides this financial statement must be responsible for his or her signature put on this paper. I would like to say that in the banking system, those auditors who verify the insolvent banks, there was one, for example, company, over the span of 1 year, they carried out 9 due diligences, let's say financial verification of 9 banks. In all cases, the assessment was conditional positive or positive. This is 16% of the general number of the banks. Can you imagine that? Another audit company carried out or conducted 7 the due diligence of those banks who are acknowledged today to be insolvent or bankrupt. You were talking about the Commission on the Securities, and I'm going to give the floor to each of the representatives of the regulator to talk about that. I would like to say that 78 emittents, you're talking about the trade and securities, which were stopped at different stock exchanges of Ukraine. And we are talking about the sum over 400 billion hryvnia. That was a mandatory audit at the national audit companies actually confirmed the financial statements and the correspondence of financial assets which are mentioned in that financial statement. We are talking about 9 companies who confirmed the figures of those companies who traded in the, let's say, fake or forged securities in the market, but we are talking about 29 in all. But one of the national audit company conducted 25 audits over the year out of the list of 78 companies. So 25 mandatory compulsory audits over the span of 1 year. Again, we are talking about conditional positive or positive conclusions. What is the philosophy of our reforms? First of all, we are talking not about the implementation of European legislation. We are talking about those people, citizens of Ukraine, who today have suffered from the fraud, which unfortunately had place in the banking sphere, in those companies who traded in the securities and the stock markets of Ukraine. That's why we would like to prevent in the future the impact of the low-quality auditor services. We are talking not about the today, tomorrow's, and day after tomorrow's life, let's say, of this of Ukraine. And the auditor is the very significant important profession in any country of the world. Our second objective is to ensure the unbiased, impartial control of those institutions or enterprises which are of social interest. We are talking about the public joint stock companies, emittents of the securities which are can be quoted at the stock exchange of Ukraine. We are talking about the banks, the insurance companies, non-public pension funds, and other institutions which carry out their activities based on the license, and those enterprises which belong to the category of large enterprises. In this way, our reforms have to ensure unbiased, impartial control of quality over those companies which are of social interest, where people actually deposit their money, contribute their money to, where they can become hostages of the low quality services. And the third objective is to ensure the unbiased and impartial control of the auditor profession, non-allowing the bad auditors to the professional market control of quality by all the subjects of the auditor activities, skills upgrading, etc., etc. Once again, I would like to remind you that in January 2011, the European Commission passed a decision about the exclusion of Ukraine from the list of third countries as a country which did not make any step towards the implementation of the, let's say, requirements towards the auditor's profession. Even Russia prepared their detailed plans how they're going to implement the reforms in that country. Ukraine did not take any step in order to prevent exclusion of Ukraine from the list of the third countries, in other words, the countries which are not member states of the EU, and which actually fell under the requirements of the simple inspection regarding allowing auditors to work in other markets in the European Union. How we structured our work, which is most important, we came to understand that to us, as a governmental agency, is very important to fulfill all the requirements of the European directives. That's why we officially approached the European Commission, the World Bank, to nominate the independent expert who could provide us expert assistance in preparing the law on auditor activity. John Hooper was such a person. He represented the independent body of social surveillance of Great Britain. He is also a member of the IFR, which unites all the regulators' auditor activities in more than 50 countries of the world. Also, he was delegated to Ukraine on behalf of the World Bank and the European Commission to provide the professional expert assistance in the preparation of this law. Many of you met him. He is very open, and he communicated with the auditors and all the activities, and also MPs, etc., etc. So first of all, we came up with a model of building the Institute of Audit in Ukraine, which would be based on the major Northern Standards European directives. This model was submitted to the European Commission, World Bank, European regulators of individual countries to carry out the test for conformity, whether it meets the requirements of European directive. We received the letter of confirmation from the European Commission, from the regulatory body of Germany and other stakeholders to whom we send those letters, containing what kind of recommendations should be taken in consideration and included in the draft law. So this draft law was prepared with a representative of the expert environment, who was actually nominated by the World Bank European Commission, John Hooper, and under supervision of the World Bank and other well-known regulators of Europe. Today, the draft law has been already prepared, and I mentioned already that it's being coordinated between the profile ministries, and in addition, we sent the English version of this draft law to the IMF, to the regulator, independent regulator, the World Bank, to the independent regulator of Great Britain and German IFR, International Forum of Regulators of the World, to carry out the test for conformity and confirm that this draft law on the activities completely meets the requirements of the European Union. In other words, we were absolutely transparent, and it's very important to us that all the requirements of the European Union are met in the law on the audit activities. And now we are expecting to get those confirmations by the end of August, after which we are going to submit those to the Cabinet of Ministers after it has been coordinated by the profile ministers. So how the Institute of Audits is going to look like? We are going to talk about reforming and the advantages which will be given, or which will get the state, the investors, and national domestic auditors. We separately are talking about the enterprises of the social importance I mentioned before. Banks, insurance companies, public and companies, or the companies whose the securities are permitted to be traded in the stock market, and some of the public enterprises. They are the enterprises, category of enterprise social importance in Ukraine and in the eyes of our citizens. Those companies' enterprise will be provided by the impartial and unbiased supervision on the body of social surveillance over the audit activities. What kind of body it is? It consists of the board in the inspection, which provides or ensures the quality. So those auditors who are going to carry out audits on the subject of social importance, banks, insurance companies, and large enterprises, they are going to go through the separate quality control ensuring the inspection and control, quality control. This is going to be independent company with independent auditors with high salaries in order to ensure they have unbiased, impartial, and objective opinion regarding the conclusions or, let's say, the findings they are going to come with. Among those auditors who are going to be allowed to take care of the auditing of the social important enterprises and companies. We are going to provide this social supervision over the auditor activity. We are talking about the Council of Supervision of the auditing activity, which is going to be subordinated to the cabinet ministers, including 11 representatives, absolutely independent. 100% from of the profession. There will be no private companies or no practicing auditors. The Council of Surveillance over the auditor activities will include represents all the regulators, the Minister of Finance, Minister of Economy, all those who deal with this securities. Also, 4 representatives will be elected to the Council. The major requirement for them not to be associated with private activities of the auditory companies. In other words, they have to be independent. Also, the Council will include representatives of science and the Minister of Justice. This Council of Surveillance on the auditor activities will provide the surveillance over observation of the inspection and control of the quality, auditor chamber, all the auditors, all the requirements fixed in the law on the auditor activities, and the standards of international standards of auditing. Once again, control of quality of the social important subject will be provided by auditor companies who have to meet the law-fixed requirements, and their activities will be verified by the Inspectorate for Ensuring Quality, and Inspectorate will be surveyed or supervised by this Council of Surveillance or Supervision. Also, we are talking about the verification of meeting the international standards within control of quantity, disciplinary measures, and punishments, fines, let's say. The Council will be able to delegate some of their representatives to the control of continuous training, control of quality, and implementation of disciplinary actions as required by European directive. By the body of surveillance over these audit activities will supervise all the activities which were delegated to them.
This unified register will be on the website, and it will be free of charge. This will increase the trust of investors to the audit carried out for domestic enterprises. This will raise trust to the banks and insurance companies. This will make their reported information more transparent and eventually raise the investment attractiveness of Ukraine. This will also raise trust of the population to the banks and insurance companies. This will create conditions of the exit and access of domestic companies on the international capital markets, and this will increase trust from international investors. This will raise trust to the of state bodies, state fiscal service, and other regulators to the financial information of the companies, and the biggest advantages for the auditors who work in Ukraine, the enlargement of the average audit, the enlargement of scope of the average, the average companies do not belong to the enterprises of public interest, but nevertheless they will be able to become the subject of audit. The second advantage is the cutoff in the number of registers, and as of today we have 5 different registers, and all the auditors have to pass special training how to work with those registers. This will decrease the amount of time necessary for training. Now we have registers, the National Bank, the Auditor Chamber Register, the State Fiscal Service, and so on. There will be one unified register posted on the website of the State Auditor Service. And the auditor will undergo one unified training how to work with this register. The management of the auditor's activities will be improved. Currently, the auditor chamber comprises the leaders of 10 private companies and leaders of some smaller companies. This should not be tolerated. Then auditors will be able to get additional earnings from the peer review process. The register of companies liable for peer reviews will be formed, and it will be posted on the website. The Auditor's Chamber will become a self-governing organization, and its members will be the subjects of auditor activity. Auditors will elect chairman of this chamber and govern its activity, and this chamber will carry out quality control for those audits which are which do not fall within the public interest, and additionally, the auditors will get access to international markets. Upon recognition of the law on auditing activity as the equivalent to the European legislation by the European Union, Ukrainian auditors will get access to the European market of auditing services, and this will make us one of the first those countries which were excluded from the list of third countries who are partners to the European Union in auditing activity to come back to this market. And also, we will become the member of the international body which unites the auditors of 50 countries, and this will allow the auditors to participate in future reforms of this business. Also, this will raise the prestige in business of auditors' profession in Ukraine and the eradication of corruption. I would like to remind you that currently we're waiting for the opinion from the European Commission, from IFR, from other auditing bodies of the European countries, and now I'd like to give the floor to the representatives of our regulators. The 12:30 is our deadline, so next half an hour we will devote to the presentations of our regulators, representatives, and then we will have half an hour for discussion. I believe that Olena represented the law quite in detail, and I won't speak about details. I would like to say that the Commission on Securities and Joint Stock Market believe that's a good right step. We are grateful to this State Fiscal Service and Olena Makeeva, who carried out this huge amount of work and developed this piece of legislation. For us, there are several very important things which have to be implemented today urgently, and some of those suggested changes are of systemic nature, also very important for us. In order to make the atmosphere in the financial sector healthier. The disclosure of information in financial sector is the foundation of trust to financial sector. Also, risk assessment is very important. All these factors result in the value of capital in the country. I would like to point out the examples which the examples with bankrupt banks. The auditor's role is to determine two important things. Banks and financial companies, they are mediators, and the transparency of the auditing procedure is of big importance. But on the other hand, the auditors depend very much on the accuracy and level of verification of the information. And quite often, you know, that information provided by the debtors should be very carefully verified by banks. The information provided about collaterals should be verified by banks, and this is an important element which is able to change the situation in the market. As for specific activities, we have cut down the number of enterprises opened for trading in the joint stocks and the stock markets, and those companies which are now in our list for further cutting down. These are the income of those enterprises. They're approaching to zero, and this is 1/3 of our list. Of course, this should not be tolerated, and this trend should not be continued. In this case, we will be unable to build up a transparent and sustainable market, which we would like to have. We are ready to improve
on the bureaucratic load, to decrease this bureaucratic load on the auditors, which because of the registers, additional conclusion of the Commission, would like to unite everything and bring it together between all the regulators, and to take a harmonized approach towards all the auditors and those intermediaries who ensure openness of the information. And that's why we'll be happy to support this draft law and to switch over to its practical implementation. Thank you. the representative of the National Bank. Actually, Ms. Olena said a lot, and we do appreciate the Minister of Finance and her personally for the work they carried out while preparing the draft law. We have the questions to those companies which conducted the audits of the banks and provide their conclusions. There are some positions, some companies are not guilty because actually some of the banks who were suspected of fraudulent actions and they have been taken out from the market, and some of them not with some kind of misbehavior. So we're preparing the letter to the auditor's chamber regarding the confirmation of those banks who are now in the list of the temporary administration. This is the main thing. The second position, I repeatedly spoke at different conferences during the last years and last year and this year, and emphasized and asking where's our head, what we are thinking about. We had to have the same responsibility for the actions of the auditors, which they take in their work and the principles they stick to. Because unfortunately, as soon as any kind of standard appears the next day, everything in the mass media, in the press, whatever, there is a question how to implement that. So, for example, how to avoid this, how to bypass it, and not to be punished by bypassing or violating the norm. So we have to think about the problem is how to do, how to make sure that we implement all those normal standards we adopt. And for example, the regulator can pass on decisions. Maybe the auditor's chamber has to prove their documents, rules and procedures that they actually meet all the requirements, that the information is correct, and the for example, we have the case when, according to statistics, they try to play with the figures that everything okay. That the problem lies that we have the lack of control over the activities of the other companies who confirm the above-mentioned financial statements. We have to strengthen these those efforts, and the auditor's chamber did a lot in order to analyze the activities of auditor companies, but the available situation shows that not enough has been done yet along those lines. A few words regarding the draft law. In essence, I would strengthen or enhance the provisions about the council composed of laymen persons. I'm talking about the independence and the functionality and rights of this council. What is written that they were talking about the structure is going to ensure the surveillance or ensure the control. I'm talking about the filling the office of the special director position. Okay, so these elected, and what next? So I would like to recommend that the council should have the right to fire such an executive director should there be any problem or misbehavior or the violation of the code of ethics, code of behavior. So actually, the council doesn't have any influence on the director. This is not correct. If you do not change the situation, why then we have to have this council? So this is a kind of attempt on the part of the Minister of Finance to set up another structure. So I would like to enhance this specific position, those standards, in order to bring the level of the social supervision to a higher level, and to further enhance our requirements and control on the top level the activities of the auditor companies. So this briefly, we are going to provide our proposals regarding this draft law. The majority is kind of the wording and some of the key issues is to bring to a higher level the independence of the structure, which is going to carry out the activities of the auditor companies, to avoid what Olena mentioned, that this can be against the pressure exerted by the auditor companies to some other enterprises in order to push forward their own, so to say, because it's clear that you can lobby your company during these activities and others to regarding the others to exert some additional pressure on them. So, thank you. Domas, maybe can speak out their opinion of the Minister of Economy because what pertains to this public enterprises. Maybe can explain the logic behind that in the light of the reform we propose. Thank you. Number one, the Minister of Economy supports the new law on the auditor activities. We are going to do everything possible for this law to be adopted as fast as possible. The Minister of Economy also has some comments regarding the auditing within the framework of the public companies, public enterprises. Now in the country is 1,233 working companies which are not efficient. So this reform is to increase the efficiency, meaning that those companies will have the profits and pay the dividends like the private companies do today. How to assess the efficiency of those companies? We need a high quality information. So far we do not have that. 70% of all the public companies are the state-run companies, legal, according to legal forms in the according to under the law. The audit is not mandatory for them, So we are going to this Friday we are going to submit our proposal to the governmental committee to make a mandatory audit for all the public companies. This will be good because we'll open the market for all the auditing companies in Ukraine, and of course the shareholders will get the more qualitative information about the activities. And next, speaking about those companies who would like to enter the stock markets or obtain the loans and credits for international financial organizations, for such companies, the standard of auditing must be rather very high. And this is not the standards invented by the Minister of Economy, but those organizations who are going to issue loans to such companies, they have the list of the auditing companies who can do the audit and which they recognize as the high-quality auditing company. So we prepared the resolution, which includes two lists of the companies. One list of the companies includes those state companies or with the assets of more than 2 billion hryvnia or the revenues of more than 1 billion hryvnia. And the second list includes the companies with the assets of more than 250 million hryvnia. For those two lists, we prepare the criteria for the auditors. If the auditors have those criteria, then they will be able to conduct the audit of those companies. So this resolution has been adopted, is in force, and now the companies have to buy the services for audit and actually ensure the audits. And we believe that 7% of the companies in those lists will have this audit for the years 2014 and 2013. Next year is the same. Should you have any questions regarding this initiative, I'll be happy to take those. Among the speakers, we have Sergiy. Maybe you can elaborate on what has been said. I agree completely with those who spoke out their minds. I'll add regarding the Securities Commission. I really believe that this new draft law will allow us to return the trust to the auditing chamber. And as regards ourselves, today we have set up a separate department for dealing with the quality of financial statements and reporting, and we do hope that we will be able to rely upon the information of the auditing company. I mean the information getting from the auditing company, national or any other, I don't know. So Today we cannot boast that we have luxury that we have all the information which we obtain of this quality. And all the company's social importance, in any way we fall under those special criteria imposed on the auditors, which they plan to apply to the auditors who are allowed to audit the social importance companies. We have the both, all the time we need the statements, financial statements, regular, intermediate, and whatever is associated with the major emission of shares or stocks. I hope that it will be done under the new law. Sorry to switch over to another topic. I'm happy that the Minister regulators together work shoulder to shoulder. And we double we actually not do overlap or we do not redundant our activities or duplicate our activities. We do everything in a very clear and transparent way. I'll be happy to take those questions, if any.
I would like to thank the Ministry of Finance for good organized work. From the very beginning, we started from the analysis of the directive, then we drafted the law and build up the system of audit business in Ukraine. But two elements of criticism. I fully share opinion of the National Bank and believe that the Council, the National Auditing Council, should have more responsibilities, broader mandate, and the second is that only big business should be subject to public supervision. That's why I believe that the list of subjects of audit should be supplemented with such smaller companies like non-banking credit unions, non-government pension funds. They should be allowed to hire smaller auditing companies, otherwise they will be unable to afford the auditing procedure. I would like to remind you that the auditing sphere is not stable, and the discussion about proper organization of auditing business continues everywhere in the United States and the United Kingdom, and they all the time think how to organize the auditing activities better in order to prevent scandals with the bankruptcies, etc. The matter is that in Ukraine we are lagging far behind, and we have to fill this this gap. This and the efforts of developed countries to improve their auditing sector shows that there are no uniform solutions, there are no perfect solutions, and that bringing to international standards, bringing Ukrainian system to international standards is simply strengthening customers' trust. This is strengthening the trust to the market, in the market, and strengthening the market itself. This was just an intermission between the interventions made by our speakers and the Q&A session. And since we have a lot of auditors, a lot of professionals here, I'm happy to open questions and answer session. Now, we will be happy to get your comments on the draft law. We would be happy to get your feedback. We will do everything possible to make this law to come to force in July 2016. That's why we will have some time for formation of the Public Council, Public Supervision Council, and for formation of other bodies who wish to ask the question. Just a moment. You will be given the microphone, and I would ask you to speak very briefly. I'm happy to see that the state tries to take responsibility. This is a serious responsibility, and the state sets the criteria for auditors. I believe that those criteria could be formulated more concisely. Actually, the state could simply make the list of PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, etc., but requesting the expensive audit requires the honesty of auditing companies. Unfortunately, auditing companies have no responsibility now for wrong audit, and I believe that in the Ministry of Finance now we will have independent counsel, and this shows that the state itself is ready to take responsibility. As of now, we do not see the list of those auditing companies which carried out the wrong audits of the bankrupt banks. This requires not just responsibility, but also the law on franchising. Many companies working in Ukraine uses this gap, and they use the right for franchising, which now is similar for McDonald's and for the big auditing companies. And I believe that the law on franchising is very important. And if the banks will continue to go bankrupt in the future, you should make blame not just auditing companies, but the verification process for those companies. The auditors need also the request for training of the auditors. I believe that the law is still not perfect, and it should be very carefully analyzed. Thank you for your comments. You mentioned the companies like Pricewaterhouse. When I mentioned discussion, when I mentioned global discussion about the role of auditing companies, a couple of months ago I read an article in The Economist, and this was article stating that even the Big Four members, Big Four auditing companies, they are not absolute authority, but we should speak about criteria and level of trust, and we should lead discussion in the context of criteria, not in the context of just bad and good companies. Everybody has the right for mistake, but the correlation process, the learning lessons process should continue. I just wanted to explain that the Supervisory Council is not within the structure of the Ministry of Finance. It is in line with European directives, is part of the reforming process in auditing field. So the council will have 10 members who are not the members of the Ministry of Finance, and just one member from the Ministry of Finance, which means that they can meet not even in the ministry. I think that there was a good idea to publicize the list of those auditing companies who carried out wrong audits for the bankrupt banks, and this would allow comments on the quality of the audit. As of today, the auditing chamber is responsible for disclosing this information. This is their function, and in the context of the Big Four, which was mentioned here, who would like to comment? I'm Pahucha Ludmila from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I won't respond to Alexander's intervention. I think we need to speak on the topic, not just express our views. On the one hand, some portion of responsibilities for bankrupt banks, for the companies which were excluded from listings on the stock exchange. Partially this responsibility is carried out by auditing companies. On the other hand, the audit just confirms the information presented in the financial reporting, and my question to the regulator, if there is the bad result, if there are bad results shown in the financial report of the company, in the balance sheet of the company, then you have to respond somehow and analyze the reasons for it. And some time ago, there was a meeting between bank companies and auditing companies when the regulator analyzed the reporting submitted by the bank and asked questions to the auditors. And this, I think, was useful practice. And my question is to you, whether you plan to resume this practice.
I can start, Katerina, maybe will elaborate in that. To us, is also key element analysis of the audit. Katerina said that they set up a separate department, since through the history of the Commission there was no high quality analysis of information. By the way, discussion of the four. We have 117 auditors in our list. The most important is that it doesn't start with the horns and ended in hoofs. You know, if you're talking about high frequency, when we assess with regulators, it's not the discussion. You understand what I mean? We are lagging behind a lot, and we have to provide a systemic resolution of each problem. The commission cannot possibly involve the sufficient number of the orders with the average salary of 3,000 hryvnia. That's why we submit already draft law to the administration. We hope that this will end in the corresponding legislative initiative on the part of the president in order to provide the self-finance of the regulators, the way or the road on which the majority, overwhelming majority of the regulators of the world stand today. So the Commission of the Security must have the sector-owned analysts, which will not analyze on financial indicators, but also the reports regarding the reserves of the oil and gas companies. If you're talking about the specific sector, also the analysis of IT. And we're talking about the more broad disclosure of information, which can provide a material or tangible impact on the assessment. How can assess the company with 700 billion in which you have no profits? Let it be Coopers or Price and Waterhouse, but this is, you know, something what we have here is impossible to reconcile with. We have to have a comprehensive approach to crystallize the problem and not to allow this tumor to devour the welfare of our nation. So this is a brief answer to this question. Maybe Katerina will add to this answer regarding the specific analysis and possibilities and the opportunities of the Commission. It seems to me that the problem is more profound than just know that the problem lies in the fact that all our social importance companies and enterprises have to prepare their financial reporting according to IFRS. IFRS was put mark on each document, so was submitted to regulators, and only in a few cases the auditors realistically spend a lot of time to bring into full conformity with IFRS. This is not a problem of the regulator. Those who prepare the financial statements or reporting not so that meets the international standards, which will prevent such cases of bankruptcy and the admittance with the unsigned efficiency. Then number two, naturally, is professionalism of the auditors who take the responsibility to sign the respective document according to the international standards. I'm not prepared to talk about percentage of the number of our auditors meet those criteria, but I can say that over the last week, we were talking about our work, we determined 20 of those which have to be immediately warned or notified that they cannot stay and remain in our register. We actually cooperate with the chamber and the exchange information about low quality auditors. The process on the way, maybe this is not a fast one, not so efficient, but the work is going on. Regarding the experts or specialists in the Commission, regarding the expert assessment, yes, we have the huge plans, but so far we are looking for the specialists. So if anybody has some of the people who can fill those vacancies, we'll be happy to take them on board. Alexei Grikovsky, Audit Chamber of Ukraine. I have several flash questions, flash answers. The first specific feature which we would like to talk about the professional auditor is self-regulated. This is professional society or auditor specialist or rather narrow, rather specific profile which manage their profession. The proposed draft law is the actual transfer from the self-regulated profession to the profession regulated by the state, because of the issues regarding the permission to work or the permission to the market, to enter the market, is regulated by financial bodies. This number one. Unfortunately, I understand that there are only a few people who know what this draft law is all about, because this is kind of confidential. In fact, we are talking about the delegation of functional control to this public body. This is complete loss of self-regulation. The major problems of today's regulation of auditor activities is that the process of admission, process of control, admission to the market and the profession are not separated from the regulator. You know that today they submit the draft law to the parliament, where those processes are separated from the regulator. I am sure that the auditor's chamber will be replaced by the Minister of Finance in a disguised form. We can talk that this is in fact independent, but we all understand that this is complete control on the part of the Minister of Finance. And the control not only in the norms and standards, because all the provisions of the register, the control quality, provisions on even the tasks for the attestation or certification are prepared by Minister of Finance. If somebody does not agree with the results of the attestation, again, you can appeal against that in the Minister of Finance. So the complete loss of the independence. So the last question I would like to ask you, how this, specifically this draft law can ensure for you the public control body some of the advantages as compared to the alternative draft law which has been submitted to the parliament, or under this situation, how specifically the state regulation of profession will provide you advantages over the independent regulation? Very briefly, I would like to say that indeed the draft law has not been put on the website or anywhere else. We could do that as soon as we get the confirmation from our public bodies. We have to take care consider all the comments and remarks. This will happen soon. The European Commission, IFR, and the other international partners promised us to provide the recommendations very fast. So I don't know what you're talking, what law, draft law you're talking about, maybe the one of Mr. Kirsch. We are telling about different laws or draft laws. Over the decades, we're only talking what has to be done. Yesterday, I found this law and I read that, and the expert finding the auditor chamber, but this chamber makes conclusion regarding this law that it has to be substantially revisited. Maybe we were talking about that draft law, and we have the author of that draft law. But indeed, there is no text of this draft law, but we promise in the nearest possible time, within 2 weeks' time, we are going to make it published, and then you will have the chance to ask the questions, and we're going to take your remarks and comments to take them into consideration, if they are in line with the European Commission, etc. Thank you. I can very briefly, realistically, I did not completely understand the majority of comments regarding that. According to the new law, all the control will be in the hands of the state. I did not find anything like that in the text which was here by Olena. For a long time, I worked in the UK, and I observed how they regulate the auditor profession there and how the whole system works, operates in the state and the supervision over auditors. According to a new law, in no way Ukraine will go counter to the standards or requirements of other countries. Well, I was talking how this new draft law will substantially improve the control over. Well, I cannot say about any other draft law. Sorry for that. What's going on now? Recently, I attended the meeting of the Auditors Chamber of Ukraine, and speaking in principle, the processes are underway. I'm talking about the quality control, what is fixed by the law, or stipulated by the law. I didn't have time or opportunity to be assured of the real control quality. I can see all the quality of the financial statement or report of emittance or professional participants were submitted to the Commission, and it leaves much to be desired. Obviously, what's going on today, regulation of the profession, control of quality, perhaps they are not at the proper level, and to say who exactly is guilty of that or whose fault is it, I cannot say because I do not have information. Actually, to introduce a second level of control, we cannot give away the right of supervision over those companies, enterprises which are of social importance and which actually brought the country to the edge of bankruptcy. There is a chain of links. You're talking about self-regulating organization, we're talking about lobbyist organization. We should not confuse different notions. What has been initiated by the Minister of Finance, but this body to a lesser degree consists of the employees of the Ministry of Finance. We consider that under the given situation, the activity of the chamber, we do not accuse anybody. We can see the low level of quality of the work, and we say that this system of control is not justified. Sorry, but we have to take some radical cardinal decisions. And we have this situation of pros and cons, and maybe you have some clarification question. No, I don't mean that that we can hear all those who support this idea, but you know, Sergiy and the others are great. My question is, will Minister of Finance regulate this or not? What we have in the draft law, the composition of this council. One man from the central executive body, we're talking about the Minister of Finance, then a commission represents Commission, the National Bank, etc. What about the education establishments on the proposal of the Central Executive Authority? 4 persons non-practicing following the recommendation of the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Finance is going to approve the composition of the council. Then the inspector, the executive director of this inspection, is nominated by the Ministry of Finance, and according to the composition of that, attestation of the auditors, the chairman of the certification committee or the Deputy Minister of Finance, Olena, Makeeva. No, the draft law doesn't have the name of Olena Makeeva. No. It reads the Deputy Minister of Finance. So my question is, will regulation be carried out by who? I mean, so may I answer a question, maybe rhetorical, but anyway, because I have not read neither of the draft laws. So the issue is, now the discussion for about the last 20 minutes is associated with who regulates, who doesn't regulate. But the problem was what Timur mentioned, is how audit can introduce the trust and efficient regulation of the market. To me, it's not the key issue who is going to regulate this or who is going to nominate or appoint somebody. This is the auditory activity is one of the important elements of this independence. Is always various. Not all, we do not have, and never we have the complete 100% independence. Even the judges do not have it. In administrative law, take any sphere, there is always some kind of categorization, gradation. But the question is, in a apart from it depends, there are any questions or whatever, so this is my response as the onlooker, not the auditor in no way. I would like to answer your question. The more I'm listening to your questions, and the more I misunderstand, because you try to confuse the control quality with surveillance or supervision. Each auditor company has to ensure the in-house control quality and supervision of the procedures. The supervision never verifies the quality, so this is going to take care of the correctness of the quality control. And wherever we have the interests of the people, the inspection quality control is going to verify and they will not receive 3,000 hryvnias in the auditor's chamber, but 2,000 euros, so they will be really independent. The auditor chamber will verify, but it will not depend upon the private auditors. Company who for many years is member of the auditor's chamber, 15 years, how it can sit for 15 years and change nothing? What the motivation do they have? The national auditors take all their certificates and they pay either to auditor's chamber or to some other body. So this reform, first of all, is meant for those auditors who were not involved in auditing of the banks or the insurance companies which are bankrupt today, but provided the high quality services. And for them, we are going to expand the market because they will have the mandatory audit of the middle size companies and will have to choose for themselves. And they will have more freedoms because the auditors from different regions call me talking about some of the court cases because they could not share something between them. So the quality will be verified only for the social importance entities in order to prevent the financial fraud with the securities. We are going to ensure the supervision there. So I would like to ask you, dear colleagues, if we are talking about the field of audit, read the European directives numbers 43 and 56, which was revisited in 2014. The draft law was prepared completely with experts from European Union, start with that, who know absolutely more than we do. And when we receive today a confirmation from the European Union, from World Bank independent regulators, maybe we'll be assured that this draft law meets the philosophy and of audit. Of course, we have to admit that in Ukraine, the professional auditor is very young. We do not have enough knowledge. Neither of the auditors in Ukraine has enough knowledge. We have to learn from the European auditors so that they could hear our voice. And we're talking about the Minister of Finance and not Minister of Finance. And one more thing. Today we have a representative in the auditor's chamber from the Minister of Finance, Mr. Chancellor. If I wanted to be in the audit chamber, I could be part of that from the very beginning when they offered me that position. No, I do not want, I am not interested to be on the auditor's chamber. I have a lot of other tasks in Ministry of Finance and accounting and more. So it should not appeal to the Minister of Finance. We should talk about the quality which we have to ensure for the enterprises of social importance so that people did not stand in the long lines for their money and for their deposits and do not say goodbye to those savings of them. And we have to confirm this kind of report. And all auditors today received the advertisement, mandatory audit, 45 or 50, 100 hryvnias. So what kind of audit? And this all goes to the Commission of Securities. We have to be honest and integral. Oleg, maybe you could add something to that.
We have time for two comments or questions. You, please. Volodymyr Holovats, Union of Auditors of Ukraine. Thank you for this public discussion of the draft law prepared by the Ministry of Finance. I would like to begin with the same that the Deputy Minister started with, that the auditors work at a poor quality level because actually these are the state bodies which regulated and supervised the auditing activities. Actually, this shows that this state activity is corrupt and inefficient, and at the level of the cabinet of ministers, quite often we hear the term international audit. What does it mean? This is the term which is inexistent. The resolution number 390 is again raises many questions. The only preventive measure against all this is self-governance, which means public supervision, but not state supervision. It should be separated from the government borders. This should be the level of the Prime Minister and the President of Ukraine. I do not wish to stop you, but please be brief. I will speak like the Speaker of the Parliament. You have just 1 minute. What is in the draft law, it conflicts with the directive number 43 and the regulations. The supervisory body should be a public body and then should supervise. Why here in the draft law it regulates? Also, when you wrote the experts who have experience in auditing activities, you did not mention the regulatory body which takes regulatory measures. This should not be direct acts of direct action. When you say that we inattentively read the directives of the European Union, that's not true. I agree that this is the first but not last discussion on the draft law. This was again the comment about independence. We have 2 more comments. I'm head of the auditing chamber, Nesterenko. Now, the reforming process last year was started by the auditing chamber, and the chamber disseminated the information so on April 1st, this was just the beginning, and then in late June there was second meeting. The draft law is on the Facebook. The draft law which Olena mentioned is on Facebook. The draft law does not correspond to the directive. The supervisory body which has to supervise the just public and or the companies of public importance. You simply spread over all the auditing companies. That is, all the functions which today is carried out by the auditing chamber is put upon the public supervisory body. I think it's unnecessary. It was maybe cheaper to make changes to Mr. Kirsch and passage of the law. It was drafted in conspiracy, and we started our work together, but late the document was drafted secretly. That's why it is distorted, and we were called as separatists. About separatists, we will speak in 10 minutes. The representative of the Ministry of Finance distorts the activity of the auditing chamber, and the representative of the Ministry of Finance never participated in our work. He never suggested any issues to the agenda. It comes to the meeting and spreads its skepticism, creates a nervous situation. And when we have seen that we are now totally controlled by the Ministry of Finance. We have to give up even our function of the inspection on the inspection of control. Thank you very much, and we are limited with the time. We do not even have the official translation of the directive. We have the official translation of the directive in the Ministry of Finance. Why they haven't read it carefully? Head of the auditing chamber do not know the languages and cannot read it. If this is a collegiate body which
Согласен с вашей реакцией, поэтому я говорю, что мы давайте завершим дискуссию на...
Let's finalize our discussion at the professional level. No input to the microphone, sorry. I do not know. What do you comment? The text of our draft law is not posted in the internet. Our draft, I think you deceive people or mislead people. Let us finish our discussion with the microphone. We have 30 seconds. Everything is distorted for the benefit of the Ministry of Finance. I'm quoting. Have to implement the cooperation with your idea is that the Ministry of Finance tries to take all the responsibility. Please allow this man with microphone to ask a question, and we will finish.
Дайте нам, кто из аудиторов, потому что нету такой информации аудитора. Дайте, мы их тут же уберем. И те, которые судятся, да, действительно, мы находили, что они делали штампунщика, и мы их убирали. Сертификаты лишили с реестра, лишили их возможности заниматься.
No input to the microphone. People speaking, not to the microphone. The interpreter cannot hear, sorry. I'm ready to respond to you. You came to my office second day upon my appointment. We all are eager to ensure quality supervision. You first went to the Ministry of Finance, then you came to our commission, and this is not quality approach. We are very unhappy with a lot of registers. We would like to have and unfortunately, nobody here today speaks about audit itself. You speak about who appoints whom and who supervises whom, and this is the only interesting question for you. Our aim is to change the situation in general. We have to eradicate such bad companies and never have them in the future. We have the last comment. This will be my discretion. And we have started, the election campaign has started in the company, and here we observe again two sharp options. Actually, today's situation shows that the profession is dying. The auditors have to pay a lot of money for all sorts of trainings, for all those registers, and there is a huge gap between the graduates in school who do not know the standards of audit and the chamber. The idea with this law is good, to cancel all those numerous registers, to cancel all the procedures set by the chamber, to cancel this access to profession barriers. Thank you for this final comment. Besides the positive aspect of the comment, it opened the discussion about the issues which are really important. I do not believe the discussion who appoints whom is important. I believe that the discussion about quality is more productive. Thank you for productive discussion. I believe